Hey everybody, and especially for Victor, today is finally the story video of the 6 Burmese lochs I have, Botia kubotai. So, there's quite a long story. These fish have perhaps the most complicated story of any fish I've ever had. So let's start off with the fact that I first wanted them starting in I think about 2018. And I had several opportunities to get them, but I ultimately refused because I don't think the tank I had at the time, the 243 liter 65 gallon, would have been large enough with its dimensions. And when things got put on hold before I could get the size tanks I have now, they got pushed to the back of my mind. But in 2021, in June 2021, when I finally did get the size tanks I wanted, they were at the forefront of my mind once again. They've always been a real holy grail fish for me because not only they're absolutely beautiful with their dark green or black color and their lighter golden spots, but they're also just very active, very visible fish, so you can get a good look at how gorgeous and beautiful fish these are. Uh, anyway, that's why they're the most holy grail for me, so I was willing to put in a lot more effort and waiting time to get them than with the other fish I wanted. And so that's actually a pretty good thing because they ended up being dead last on the list of long waiting occupants for this tank that I was intending to get. This tank could start supporting fish in 2022. It I'd gotten the several of the fish species in 2022, but for most of 2022, for the most part, I couldn't even find any good shipments of Burmese lochs, and that's another thing where my patience came in handy, because these are not a very common fish. You have to be patient to actually get them. They don't show up on the. Okay, I'm sorry about the no Burmese lochs in the camera right now. I will try to turn the camera to where they are. Actually, I think it's appropriate for for when I'm talking about the rarity of them. Actually, so you have to wait quite a while to actually get them. In the majority of cases, the majority of pet stores will probably not have them in stock on a regular basis. They are a special order fish, and mostly because of difficulty of collection and not, I think difficulty of collection and not that high demand. But before I did get them, there was a notable occurrence. The irrelevance of this occurrence is going to come back later on in this story. So on June 17th, 2022, when I was shopping at the local pet store for some supplies, I ended up seeing some absolutely gorgeous Burmese lochs there. And the thing about those Burmese lochs is that, I mean, all of them were gorgeous, but one of them stood out so much that I just had to take a picture of specifically it. Unfortunately, I can't figure out how to put the picture in this video for demonstration purposes, but that Burmese loch, I mean, it looked a lot like one of the ones I have now, which I'll get to later on. So anyway, yeah, that Burmese loch really stood out at the time. It's always been firmly entrenched in my memory for how great it looked. And although, again, this will be elaborated to as well later on in the story, but this Burmese loch was essentially a harbinger of the gorgeous Burmese lochs I would get. Anyhow, the actual getting the Burmese lochs didn't come until over a year later. I found these Burmese lochs on June 21st, 2023, so just under a year from today, and so I ended up getting them. And at first I was very paranoid because this is a species known to be rather prone to internal parasites like worms and tapeworms, nematodes, stuff like that. Not good. But these Burmese lox, as far as I could tell, were not exhibiting any of the characteristic signs of internal parasite infestation. Absolutely none of them. So that's the main driving force that made me decide to get them. Anyway, so I took them home and I put them in the quarantine tank for 3 months, as is the usual protocol, adding a little bit of tank water from this tank every week in order to, along with the new water replacements, to get them used to the bacteria or any other microbial populations in this tank. And in the quarantine tank, I discovered some reasons why these aren't your average loch. So, I mean, although the full nature of these differences would not become apparent until I moved them down here, but as I alluded to in the basic stock overview video, these lochs have a real individuality to them. They're much more individual than other fish, especially other schooling fish, and that can be both entertaining and a challenge. If you combine the two, I would say it's an entertaining challenge. It's kind of like the fish version, the underwater version of raising a bunch of kids. So, the way that challenge first presented itself was with, to my surprise, it was different food preferences. Some of the Burmese lochs ate pellets, others did not. And I found this a big shocker because Botia lochs normally take to pellets very, very well. They're not picky fish in the slightest, not fussy about what they eat. Normally that's not a problem at all. But anyway, I wasn't sure initially what the cause of this was. I figured maybe it was quarantine tank stress. So I gave in to them. I gave them the frozen foods that they would eat, although they were not eating very much in the quarantine tank for obvious reasons. And then on September 20th, 3 months later, I moved them down here. So, as soon as I moved them down here, they actually did something that surprised me greatly. Although in the quarantine tank they were skittish, they wanted to hide when I was doing maintenance, and I'd never done this before in the quarantine tank, on the very same day I transferred them down here, they came right up to my hands at feeding time. And even were comfortable being lifted even were comfortable going some way out of the water to get their food, which was quite surprising. I'd never trained them to do that, so I think maybe this boldness is inherent. As I alluded to earlier, they're very active fish. Maybe they're also on the bolder side as well. Anyhow, so since I got them in here on September 20th, the individual differences started to become apparent. The nature of the individuality in the Burmese lochs goes beyond just simple food preferences. Their general behavior when it comes to, like, interactions is also different. Some of them are, all of them will come up to my hands and interact, which Feeding Time's video is going to cover, but not all of them do it with the same response. Some of them take a lot of time to come up. They don't come up that often. Others of them are going to come up on a regular basis, like as soon as I put my hands in the water, and they will even continue coming up even after being repeatedly dropped down back in the tank because I have to deal with the other fish. And this is what I meant when I said it's like a variety of dealing with kids. It's like a fun challenge. So it's really good entertainment, and you can get quite a good laugh out of it. Anyhow, back to the matter of the food. what I was doing to train the Burmese locks that were more fussy, or should I say, with different individual preferences, was to actually a mix of regular and non-regular methods to get them onto the pellets. The first one was just soaking pellets in the frozen food juice until they ate those pellets, then giving less soaked pellets and more unsoaked pellets till they took the frozen pellets unsoaked. One of the three Burmese locks has adapted to the pellets directly on this method. The second one that has required me to do the non-standard method. It was to mix in the pellets with the frozen food, let the frozen food air dry in the fridge overnight to make it bind more with the pellets, roll that into tiny bite-sized pieces, and then feed it to the Burmese locks so they get more of the taste of the pellets in their mouth. What I did with that was I started that I think 2 weeks ago, and one of the Burmese locks that wasn't trained by just soaking the pellets has been successfully trained to take straight up pellets this way. The third one hasn't been trained yet, but I don't see why it wouldn't be trained shortly. Anyhow, now it's time to introduce the individual Burmese locks as they show up anyway. Sorry, the Burmese lock I want to start out with doesn't appear to be on screen at the moment, so I'll just start off with alright, so I guess I'll have to go over the basic split between the two different varieties of the Burmese locks here. So I've got 3 large spotted ones and 3 smaller spotted ones. You can actually see one of the smaller spotted 3 is on the left, one of the larger spotted 3 is on the right. Although, as I'll go over when all of them actually come onto the screen, not all of them conform to the classic pattern you would expect of the larger ones having the smaller spots and the smaller ones having the larger spots. Alright, so if the Burmese lock I was going to introduce with isn't going to show up yet, I might as well talk about the stuff beside their names. So, one thing I found, I wish I could have shared this information on Locks Online, the famous lock website, although it's mostly from the early and middle 2000s, so I think some of the information on it could use a bit of updating, as good as much of the information is. So, Locks Online recommends the classic tropical temperature for Burmese lock of 24 to 28 Celsius. They also note that it is a species that may pester very small or slow-moving fish. And I'm thinking, my findings have been that it's these may have something to do with each other. So here's the thing. I don't know if these Burmese locks have ever been in water that was above 22 degrees Celsius when I've had them. This tank is actually somewhere, but I don't think this tank ever goes above 22 degrees Celsius, but over the course of the year, it's between 19 Celsius and 22 Celsius, and doesn't have a heater in it. But despite all this, contrary to what might be expected going purely off of the Burmese locks temperature recommendations at Locks Online, there's no problems with the Burmese locks being slow or uncomfortable from a too low of a temperature. They're behaving without the excessive boisterous aggression or anything that you would expect. They're behaving as feisty and active as ever, just without boisterous aggression or nipping or anything like that. I'm thinking maybe the temperature recommendations for Locks Online are too high. I'm thinking because higher temperatures can cause increased aggression in fish, because they heighten the metabolism, give the fish a lot of extra energy that it has to burn on somewhere. And I'm thinking maybe these Burmese lochs don't actually come from areas in the wild that have these temperatures so high. I'm thinking they might come from snow-chilled streams that are chilled from the mountain streams, and therefore are a bit colder than the usual tropical temperature. In fact, I mean, this is the same thing as with the Koolie loch story I covered in the previous video. A much lower temperature than recommended seems to be doing them well. And I think, in fact, this is the reason I've never seen mine reporting any of this excessively boisterous or possibly semi-aggressive behavior. I think the fact that they're being kept at an appropriately low temperature is nipping any aggression in the bud. These have been very model citizens. I'm very pleased with their behavior, and in fact, if we look at them as more of a temperate or colder water fish, I mean, if it wasn't for the different dietary requirements and differences in flow rate, just like weather lochs, I think Burmese loch could be looked at as suitable for the goldfish tank if we're talking temperatures alone. Or, I mean, for a more definite recommendation, I think if you live in a climate that's not tropical, I mean, if you don't want to use a heater in your tank and your house stays between 19 to 22 degrees, or you have a part of your house that stays within that temperature, Burmese lochs should be an excellent candidate for the tank. Weather lochs aren't the only possible loch candidates for a tank with no heater. Anyhow, this is perhaps something. This is just like Victor, like you report for learning about from the community. The community knows much more than any of us, and I hope to share with the community what little I do know to further its knowledge. And I hope this will lead to, hopefully, more tanks that could get Burmese lochs actually getting them, as well as, like not people being scared off from getting Burmese lochs because they think their tanks are too cold, but I mean, just looking at the greater range of options for a lower temperature tank, as well as nipping aggression in the bud. These, and what else can I say until the one I want to introduce comes onto screen? So, I mean, one thing Lochs Online has recommended rightly, though, is the flow. These ones do quite well with the fast-flowing water in this tank. I think, I mean, of course, my hypothesis is that they come from mountain stream chilled water, so, I mean, of course, those would be chilled, but also fast-moving, so it only seems natural to give that option to them as well. Anyway, the Burmese loch I want to introduce is coming up to the screen now. There, on the far left, sorry about the, alright, it's coming closer now. So this Burmese loch is, I would say this Burmese loch is the single most influential fish I've ever had. It's, if it wasn't for this Burmese loch, I would do a lot of things very differently from the way I do them. And, it all started because of some of the behavior I was describing initially. So, this Burmese loch on the leftmost Burmese loch is named Liam. So, you might remember that name sounds familiar from previous videos, and yes, I can confirm this is named after exactly the person who you think it is. My friend Liam that I was talking about in some of the older videos. So, Liam, if you're watching this is your Easter egg in this video. Liam the Burmese loch. So let's start off with why Liam the Burmese loch is called that. This is the Burmese loch that I was talking about that does the jumping into my hands, not getting out of the way even after I pick him up and dump him back into the tank. and then actually eating his food out of the water, even though he's not a loch that can breathe air. Like that is a lot of willpower. It's admirable. It's remarkable, and that's one of the things the name Liam means. Like having a lot of willpower. So when my friend Liam came over, and shortly before he came over for the first time on December 28th, I had noticed this Burmese loch matched up very well with his name, and I figured, even though I hadn't really been one to name fish before, I figured I might as well designate this fish as Liam the Burmese loch. And that set off a chain reaction of naming all the other fish I have, because if I'm going to name one, why not name all of them? And I'm very grateful for this, because naming my fish has made such a difference. They feel much more individualistic. Their names can have fun backstories, can be fun to pick the names, etc. Anyhow, there's more than that Liam the Burmese loch has done. Sorry, just to get the focus on Liam the Burmese loch while their story is being told. Liam the Burmese loch doesn't just have a lot of willpower. It's what they do with that willpower. They actually, Liam the Burmese loch has a serious problem with overeating. And not just overeating. They'll eat anything, any kind of food, not picky at all. Like this, he's one of the 3 Burmese lochs that would eat the pellets. He did that even in the quarantine tank, and although it took me some time to realize he had an overeating problem because he was a bit thin at first and needed to be beefed up, I noticed, I think about January 7th of this year, that he had started to get fat, so about just over 3.5 months after I first put him in here, I saw his tummy had started to get a little too big. And that's what you get from, I guess, not knowing you've got a fish with an overeating problem, and then not restricting their access to food for 3.5 months. So, I mean, he's not that bad now, because I've cut down on his food intake considerably with a variety of ways, which I'm going to get to when we make a feeding time video. But I mean, previously he had a huge beer tummy, like your sun catfish, your very fat sun catfish, and the amount he would eat if he was not restricted was, if you remember, in April 2022, when you had to feed the 2 hungry piraibas until firm refusal when they were attacking the big bad. If you remember how fat their tummies were, that is how much Liam the Burmese loch will eat if he's not restricted for his food consumption. So if you can imagine eating like that at every meal, not just for spawning season, equals one fat Burmese loch. He might still be a little on the fat side, so I'm still trying to restrict his food consumption as much as it can be restricted. The more meals where he eats nothing, the better, until he stops being fat. But it's an improvement from the way he once was, I can tell you that. The second Burmese loch I'd like to go over, you can actually see in the top left corner of that fake pink plant. This Burmese loch is, oh, no, wait, sorry. I forgot to explain more about Liam the Burmese loch. So, the fact that he has a lot of willpower, will go through great lengths to eat, and is not even stopped from eating by being hoisted out of the water, or being carried out of the water and dumped back in. I mean, that's pretty much the exact, if you remember I mentioned the piraibas, that's pretty much exactly the opposite of fun-size kuma. If I'm thinking back to the January 11th, 2024 video of fun-sized kuma making that huge hesitation for 12 minutes, and also the December 27th, 2023, a fun-sized kuma hesitating for 30 minutes, not taking the mullet. That's pretty much exactly the opposite of Liam the Burmese lock. So I call Liam, one of the nicknames I have for Liam the Burmese lock, actually the only nickname, sorry. The nickname I have for Liam the Burmese lock is the piraiba on opposite day. And I'm going to tell Liam about this when he comes over. I mean, after I introduce him to fun-sized kuma, that's, if you remember, I said that fish presentation would also be to give context on my fish besides just introducing fish story, and that is that context. That is some of that context. Liam the Burmese lock, because he lives up to being a Liam, that also makes him a piraiba on opposite day. He is anyway. So oh, Liam, if you're watching this, yeah, this video has been made before I gave you that presentation. So yeah, of course, flashback to what I will have explained to you in that presentation about Liam the Burmese lock getting the piraiba on opposite day. And of course, last but not least, Liam is one of the 3 larger spotted Burmese locks I have. So now that I've told you all about Liam the Burmese lock, I can tell you about the next Burmese lock, which is in the top left of that fake plant. This Burmese lock is named after another friend of mine. It's named after Liam's brother Gabriel, who of course also came over, and they look about as similar as my actual friends Liam and Gabriel do, so I think it's appropriate. And here's the funny thing. When I told Liam and Gabriel about how Liam the Burmese lock had a serious overeating problem, at the time, I mean, when they were feeding the fish, I cautioned it to them that they had to make sure, don't give Liam the Burmese lock anything. But at the time, Gabriel the Burmese lock did not have an overeating problem, so I actually let them know about that. They could feed Gabriel. And the funny thing is, Gabriel mentioned between him and Liam, he was the one that did the overeating. And I think these were mad Dr. Dolittle style words. So Gabriel, that's your Easter egg. If you remember from the fish presentation, this is if you're seeing this video, this is a flashback to that part. That's what I meant when I said you're probably some kind of Dr. Dolittle. Or magician, because the day after you said that, Gabriel the Burmese lock, your Burmese lock, did start overeating, and I don't want him to get fat like Liam the Burmese lock did. So he's going on a diet too. Like I said in the like I will have said in the presentation. Not that I'm blaming you for that or anything, but I think it's a bit too much of a coincidence. As I would have said, I think he probably heard what you said and wanted to be a bit more like you. Anyhow, so next for the third Burmese lock I'm going to introduce you to is actually sorry.